So it's been a while since we've taken a look at a case. So today we're going to take a look at Be Quiet Shadow Base 800 FX. You know, lately, it's backwards. Lately, Be Quiet's been like super excited about its new like white series of stuff, but I think they've had white cases already for a while. But anyway, we'll take a look at the Shadow Base 800 FX. Shadow and white. Do those two go together? Computer cases are boring. They're unsung heroes, but you know what? They're important because one, they have to like house all of your components. Two, they're responsible for the overall cooling capability of those components. If the case itself is suffocating all the parts inside, then the case can be your bottleneck of performance if it's a thermal issue. They're also the thing you look at every single day. So unless you have a window, which this one does, the case is the only thing you're gonna see. So anyway, the Shadow Base 800 FX. With it being an FX means it has integrated lighting in there. You can see the color version of this one here is white with the little sticker. And a couple other things to note here, like overall cooler height capability for it. So obviously it's EATX, that's nice to see. We'll see though. Oftentimes cases will say EATX, and then there's like something right there to block other cables from getting to it. But we'll see. EATX all the way down to mini ITX. Looking for the maximum cooler height though. CPU cooler up to 180 millimeters. PSU up to 250 milliliters? 250 millimeters long, and GPU up to 430 millimeters long. Now they say up to because you add front fans and radiators and things on the front of this. If you go water cooling, then that's gonna cut into some of the height or the length available to your GPU. So let's start with the unboxing. It's got hard foam in there, which it's fine to ship a case, but if you're gonna assemble a full system in there and try and ship it, that foam is not gonna do you much good. This is gonna suck. Ow! I just wanted to get it over with. And it fooled me because I touched the styrofoam and I thought it was done, and then it wasn't. I found that rather shocking. But there's actually two Be Quiet cases we're gonna be taking a look at. We got this one right here, which is the 800, the Shadow Base 800, and then we also have the 701, which is actually a bigger case. You would think the 800 would be a bigger case because it's a bigger number, but no, the 701 is actually bigger than this. But let's go ahead and get the static generator removed from the case. That would also be the plastic. It's a pretty fancy looking case here. I see some things in here that I like already. So the top fan filter, it's magnetic. Porosity on it, it's not gonna be great. It's probably less than 50%. That means how much of it is open versus blocked. So obviously a larger hole in the mesh would be a higher porosity. This appears to be maybe 50-50, maybe a little bit less than that. I do like that we at least have up here too the Be Quiet logo, so it's not just a regular old mesh piece. Typically, if I'm running exhaust fans up here, I would remove the mesh because I'm more concerned with having as much airflow out the top of the case as possible. Having the mesh on there is just gonna reduce that airflow, but without it, it's kind of not the most attractive looking thing. It's a little unfortunate-ish. I guess if you really wanted to, you could trim the mesh and just have the frame be on there. So the manual is just sitting here at the bottom. You can see the black version. Like I said, they kind of have white editions coming out now of pretty much all their cases, so that's what we're looking at here is the white version. The manual does show us things like different fan layouts, radiator layouts, how some of the modularity works in there, because you can do things like move the drive cages around, etc. How to remove your fan filters and such, how to remove the front. But it's kind of nice because you can see like different radiator layouts and it shows you how thick of a rad, what size rads will tend to fit. It kind of gives you an idea too of what will interfere. Like for instance, if you were to put a really thick 360 rad in the front or 420 rad in the front, you interfere in some of that top space. So it kind of gives you an idea of what will and won't work. So that's kind of nice to see. It also shows, obviously they fit 140 millimeter fans and 120 millimeter fans. Speaking of fans, we have 4 pre-installed Be Quiet Lightwings fans in here. So these are not like cheapo, El Cheapo case fans you would tend to throw away. They're just like flimsy plastic crappy fans that won't match anything else that you get because of the fact that the fans that they tend to put in cases are different than the fans that they sell independently. But as we take a look at the inside, you can see we have 4 pre-installed 140 millimeters Lightwings fans in white. So they match the white case, obviously. Now the white Lightwings have been out for a year now, like exactly a year from the time that we're taking a look at this video. But that's just nice because that means you're getting 4 off-the-shelf independent fans that they also sell, which means that you could populate more in here and have them all match. Like I said, most case manufacturers will just put a cheapy fan in there that's worth a couple of bucks maybe. on the chance that you'll buy their case. That way there's some fans that are included, but I think most people that are shopping in this category or this price point are gonna toss any basic case fan anyway to put something nice in there. So these already have illumination now because of the fact that we have 4 of the Lightwing. So it makes me wonder now, is there gonna be an RGB hub on the back of the case? I really hope there is. But there's something else that I'm seeing here. This guy right here is pretty neat. So this is removable depending on how much space you need up here for, let's say, ultra thick radiators, push-pull configurations, etc. Although you need to be mindful of just how far out you can push that because of the fact that it is kind of indented there. So if you're going 420 millimeter radiator, you only have so much thickness before you hit this little piece right here. But I like the fact that this has this sort of a scoop shape to it, so that some of that air that's making its way into the bottom component, or the bottom compartment of this case, would make its way to the power supply, but the power supply has its own air intake on the bottom. So the power supply has its own fan and stuff. That means that air can get scooped and pushed back up through here directly into the upper component or compartment to see whether or not that actually helps with airflow. I think what we might do is at the end of this video, we might hook up the smoke machine again and just see if whether or not it's actually doing that. And then not completely smoke the place out like we did last time on accident, where we had the place look like it was literally on fire. Let's see, we've got this bracket right here, which does something. No, it comes off, it's obvious, it's plastic too, it's really flexible. This is something a lot of cases have started including in their designs now, just to help cover up some of the cables making their bends back to the motherboard. But you need to be mindful too that if you have a motherboard with a 90-degree 24-pin layout, it actually should be okay in here. When I take this off, you'll see why, and we'll test fit that in a second. We've got a pretty decent amount of space between our top radiators and such right here before we even come close to impacting anything on the motherboard. But because it is offset, as you can see right here, it pushes the fans and the radiator closer to the side glass or the side panel, so that you can clear any tall VRMs that might be existing on your motherboard. With power delivery requirements, what they are today for modern CPUs, the heat sinks are getting taller and bigger on motherboards. So there can be an interference there if they were to center that. The downside is in terms of being centered, and when it comes to the easiness of the ease of installing water cooling, the front radiator fans, if I pop this off, are centered. Pogo pins, yep. Pogo pins right here for RGB, right there. So the front does have an illumination ring, like strip right here and right here that will light up. And we'll light that up in a little bit so you guys can see. This is also how you get to your fan filter, which is magnetic. You can leave it off if you want. But this is centered. So that means this is actually offset from the top. So that means if you're doing water cooling and you want to have like nice L bends or 90-degree bends to the rad, you'll have to offset it rather than just having it all line up because it's on the same plane. So one is over from the other, they are offset. You can see we have thumb screws that are captive also for the side panel, so you're not gonna lose these when you go to take them off. But we also have, sound dampening material, which is another key component for Be Quiet. Like pretty much all their panels have this. It helps a little. There's so many other vents and openings in this case. Sound is gonna make its way out no matter what. It does help a little bit, and it also helps dampen some vibrations that might make its way through the case. We also have a captive, thumb captive screws on our power supply shroud. So you take this off, you mount this direct to your power supply, and then you slide the power supply in and mount that down. So you don't have to worry about losing screws for that. These are also thumb screws that are on there. Looking at the backside, holy cow, do we have a splitter. So we've got our pre-installed fans and RGB. This is so nice because that means we already have the back and the front handled. When it comes to fans, we don't have to wire them up or cable manage them. They're already in there, cable managed and plugged in. The only thing we have to plug in are the signals that are going to be coming from the motherboard. And I do like that the plugs are also white with the white cables. So here's our front panel connector, which is a single plug. Because things have sort of become standardized on the front panel connectors, although there's still some pushback on whether or not that's truly a standard, all the motherboard manufacturers have sort of adopted the same layout for power button, reset button, power light, and hard drive light, activity light. Means you can just have one plug to plug in, which makes this so nice for beginner builders, not to deal with the stupid dual plugs to try and get them all lined up. We have our white USB-C. We have our SATA power right there. This is gonna be for our hub, for our RGB as well as our fans. We also have HD audio, which to me is I'm still surprised this exists these days. because whatever, they're shielded, they help keep the buzzing out, but they still tend to buzz over time sometimes, depending on the quality of your other cables and shielding in your system. And then we have our signal wires here for our hub, like I said. So we have one RGB input, and then we have one PWM fan signal right here. The downside about this is by having everything connected to one hub means they're all gonna speed up and slow down together. That's not necessarily a problem. It's just, if you have 4 exhaust fans on here, 1 in the rear, 3 in the top because you're running a 420 rad or something up there. Although there's not a lot of 420 AIOs, they do exist. That means you're going to probably have to do some balanced airflow here because of the fact that you have 3 intake fans on the front. Now, although if you're going through a radiator on the top, that's gonna reduce airflow, which means you're probably gonna have more CFM coming in the front than what's going out the top. I only mention that if you're super anal about making sure that everything's balanced airflow with either neutral pressure or positive pressure. But this means all the fans would be speeding up and slowing down together. So if you plug this into your CPU header and you just leave it on the auto PWM, you're gonna have all your fans speeding up and slowing down all over the place based on standard PWM CPU fan header algorithms and motherboards. Meaning sometimes you might load a program, and if you have a 14900K or something, the temperature can spike suddenly, which means all your fans go whoo together. So beyond that, that's everything that comes on the front panel connectors there. I love that that's all pre-wired. We do have space for 4 more fans. We only need to put 3 more in here actually to be fully outfitted. So that's kind of nice that we have an extra one on there. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4 additional fan headers on there. Which is pretty nice. Let's see, this is our hard drive mount right here. So you can mount 2.5-inch SSDs on the backside, or an additional controller if you decide that you're not going to use this and you want some other ecosystem in there. You probably mount the control box to that. This guy just pops off right here, which is just a plate to fill that gap. And the reason you have this on there is because you need to be able to get your wires and stuff going to your SATA connector or your SATA drives. So you've got this guy. I think I just put it on upside down. It's a little crooked now. So I'm still trying to see how to get this guy out of here. Is there a screw up there? Oh yeah, there is a screw up here. There's a black screw right under there. That looks like it's holding on this plastic piece. The reason why I even mentioned that is the fact that you can scoot it over. You can move it over from there to there, giving you a little more clearance for any of the super wide motherboards that maybe are wide but don't have a 90-degree header, so they have to make the bend. That way this is not going to be in the way. So you do have what appears to be about an extra inch or about 25 millimeters of movement to the left. It looks like you might even be able to move it. No, you can't move it inward. So there's that, pretty straightforward. Looking at the bottom down here, you can see that is just one big gigantic opening for a much bigger power supply than anyone should ever actually really need. So I don't see there's even a fan mount right here. Now you see this, we have a 120 and a 140 fan layout right there. If you wanted to bring in extra air from the bottom, I guess you could. That seems to me a little bit unnecessary though, because it's just gonna, I guess it would blow right up through there. That'd be an interesting test to see if a fan down there actually helps coming up into there. The fan filter on the bottom pulls out the front, and since it runs the entire length of the case, that's important because if you have it up against, on a desk against the wall, you can't go backwards. You need it to go forward. So there is that. Highly recommended that you leave the bottom dust filter on because the power supply pulling in air and any dust on your desk can make its way up in there and start to clog up. So it's much easier to pull this out and blow it out than to tip your case over and try and blow out the power supply. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. There's plenty of tie-down straps on here for cable management. There's no real channels or anything like designed for you to be able to run cables in to keep them nice and tidy. It's just more of a flat panel back here that's intended to have this sort of cover the unsightliness of seeing those cables through the opening. There's also no mount right here for attaching fans or anything right here, which has sort of become a staple of case design these days. A lot of case manufacturers are using this wall now to put fans on. This case is not. So it's got a double hard drive bracket for 3.5-inch drives. I'm not entirely sure how to use it, but I know it goes down here, and you can have multiple positions you can mount that in so that you can have support. Where'd it go? Come on. There. So you have different positions you can move it in so you have support for the length of your power supply. What we can't figure out though, honestly, is how you're supposed to attach a hard drive to it. So this is one of our bad hard drives, but it's supposed to attach to this somehow. And according to the picture, it's like right there, but the manual's pretty poor in this aspect. So I don't know how I'm supposed to mount the drive to this. So taking off points for their manual and their bracket design here, because this makes no sense. Like we got screws right here and their image shows a thumb screw there, right? And it shows how you can move it, and then it's like hard drive attached. How? It's just like floating there. Just in a thumb screw. How the hell does that supposed? Okay, moving on. Not everything can be perfect. So that's a terrible design in my opinion. What's not a terrible design though is the fact that you've got this additional area right here that you can mount another 2.5-inch drive or RGB controller or another 3.5-inch drive right here. So it can actually mount on that bracket like that if you wanted it to. That's gonna obviously block the back of your motherboard where you need to be able to access it for installing your cooler and such if you needed to. So you can undo that, and then you can undo these Velcro straps right here, and then you can actually swing it away. As you can see, I don't wanna have it fall off right now, everything's zip tied in. But you can actually pull this off and then move it out of the way and access the back of your motherboard. So not incredibly convenient if you forget you need access to the back of your motherboard once it's put together, but not impossible to be able to access it if you needed it. Okay, so it's really dark, obviously. We have it lit so that you can hopefully see the smoke once I start. Just a couple caveats. One, it's a white case trying to film smoke. That's hard. Usually we do this with a black case. Second of all, I don't know how well this is gonna work, so let's just see. I do not have the top fans populated, only the front. And what I'm trying to see is what the overall airflow looks like. But there's a fair amount of airflow, even with the front filter on, because I do have the front filter on. So you can see right here just how easily it's picking up the smoke, and look how much it's pushing out the back of the case. And I did tape up the motherboard IO shield, where the motherboard would be blocking that off. But I think the most important thing to take from this is that, wow, check this out. It actually pulls the smoke back out the front. If I put the smoke underneath, it pulls it back out and goes into the front of the case. But the biggest takeaway from this right now is the fact that I'm completely smoking out this room, and the airflow is so great that it's overpowering any chance of it really scooping up through that filter. So that probably really helps with the bottom fan, to be honest. But look at how much of the positive airflow there is out the top, even with the filter on right now. It's one of those things where I would like venture to say, in terms of case cooling, it has got more than enough with just those 3 intake fans and that one rear exhaust, and then obviously the cooler on the top would just be additional airflow. So the Be Quiet Shadow Base 800FX, it's a pretty good, it's a full tower case technically. I mean, it might also qualify as like a jumbo mid tower. I feel like the qualification between mid tower and full tower is sort of lost these days. The price, it's currently $169 US. But if you look at the price, a 3-pack of the Lightwings white fans is $54 on Amazon. That really brings the price of the case down to about $113, right? $114. That's actually a pretty good deal just with the fans alone. So you can see with the lighting on right now, it's just very nice, clean aesthetic. Available in white, available in black. I think it's got plenty of airflow for any of your air-cooled components, and I think obviously that much airflow would be good for water-cooled components too. 420 in the front, or 360 in the front, 360 on the top, 420 in the front, maybe a 280 in the top, etc. You have options. I don't think you need to go with anything crazy in terms of adding a whole crap ton of fans in this. Just whatever fans we throw on the top now for our AIO, if we did that with matched Lightwings so that everything is coordinated, would be a pretty sexy looking build. But it's like a lot of case manufacturers want to charge you this much for a case and not even give you a good fan with it. So the fact that it's $167, I think it's $167 on Amazon is what it was currently going for. The black one was actually more expensive. Typically it's the other way around. But the black one was about $10 more, which is really odd. But considering the fact that the cheapest I found the 3-pack of the Lightwings white fans for was for $54.99 on Amazon, shows you that you're getting an actually really good deal for this case. All right, so there you go, guys. There's our look at the Shadow Base 800FX. Again, the FX just means it's got RGB on it. So I think it's a really well thought out case, especially for the price. Anyway, if you guys have built in this, sound off down below what it was like. I had to assume building in this would actually be pretty simple. There's lots and lots of room in there. And I think another important thing to consider is the fact of how quiet this case actually is. All 4 fans are currently running at full speed, and I know my lavalier mic is not even picking that up, and it is it's like a half a meter away from me. Sure, the backside's facing me, but the front fans are right there. And that airflow test that you just saw was with all the filters on, top and front. So it actually surprised me how much airflow it was able to create, even with the filters being pretty dense in terms of being able to catch smaller particles of like hair and fur and dirt and dust and stuff like that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.